Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving right into a seriously mind-bending concept today. We are looking at how to compress what would normally take a lifetime of personal growth into just 3 to 6 months. Seriously. It's all about operating so far outside of everyday logic that people looking in are going to honestly wonder if you found some sort of cheat code for life. I mean, just imagine for a second skipping the whole incremental step-by-step grind and jumping straight from level 1 to level 100. To pull that off, our source material makes it very clear. You have to completely shatter the standard mindsets that keep most people stuck. Because let's be real, normal mindsets, they just give you normal, average results. If we want absolutely abnormal results in an unbelievably short amount of time, we have to rethink the whole concept of time and progress. And this quote right here just brilliantly hits the nail on the head. You are not years away. You are only ever vibrations away. It completely flips the script. Instead of focusing on time-based progress, it shifts the focus entirely to energy and frequency. The whole idea is that by shifting your energy and stepping into a new identity today, you literally set a completely new reality in motion immediately. Time just isn't the main factor anymore. Now, if that sounds a bit too abstract, don't worry. We've got a very concrete 6-step psychological playbook to bridge the gap here. We'll be walking through 1. The autopilot identity trap. 2. Defining your preferred reality. 3. Designing your future self. 4. Identifying the identity gap. 5. Closing the gap today. And finally, 6. Surviving the ego death. All right, let's kick things off with step 1, the autopilot identity trap. You know that incredibly frustrating feeling of just being totally stuck? Well, our source points out something that's honestly so validating. Being stuck is not a lack of effort on your part. Actually, what's really happening is a glitch in your inherited programming. The vast majority of us are just walking around in what's called an autopilot identity. This is a repetitive, totally subconscious state that's been heavily programmed by fear-based beliefs we inherited from our environments and, past traumas. So the big takeaway here is you absolutely cannot create your dream life operating from that same old trauma-based energy. The very first thing you have to do is consciously make peace with letting that old autopilot version of yourself go. Which leads us straight into step 2, defining your preferred reality. So you can't really let go of the old self unless you've got something new to grab onto, right? You have to put a stick in the ground. To put this into perspective, there's this incredible real-world anecdote from our source. Picture this, January 11th, 2024. They are running a struggling business out of a tiny, isolating bedroom in Ireland. But right then and there, they made a massive decision. They wrote down this seemingly impossible vision, becoming a successful creator, a coach, building a thriving community, and moving abroad. Now, they didn't even fully believe it themselves at the time, but just the simple act of deciding and physically writing it down, that set everything in motion. And today, they are literally living that exact defined vision. All right, moving to step 3, designing your future self. Okay, this is the actionable core of the whole explainer. So you might want to grab a pen and paper for this, because actually physically writing this out is what creates that quantum shift. We're using something called the stick figure method. You literally just draw a stick figure, and no, you don't need any artistic talent for this, that represents the version of you who already naturally exists in your dream reality. Then you start detailing them. What are their dominant emotions? Do they feel confident, free, relaxed? What are their defining characteristics? What are their minimum standards? And what are their daily habits? Let's look at a quick case study to really ground us. So, meet Frank. Current Frank is a freelance video editor. He's dealing with inconsistent income, basically just taking whatever random projects fall into his lap. But future Frank? Future Frank is pulling in $100,000 a month. He runs his own film studio out in Bali. He's leading a huge team, traveling the world for surf edits, and just exuding this natural confidence. By getting super clear on future Frank, current Frank suddenly has an exact blueprint for the identity he needs to step into right now. And I want to highlight something really crucial here. Minimum standards. There is this powerful psychological rule that says we rarely rise to our highest expectations. Instead, we inevitably fall to our lowest standards. So, what does your future self absolutely refuse to accept? Maybe they keep their word without fail, or they never leave a conversation without networking. The source actually shares this surprisingly funny anecdote about a client whose future self, as part of her routine, drank a daily green juice. As weirdly specific as that is, when she started drinking that green juice every day, it completely shifted her frequency, and suddenly she started attracting these major investor meetings out of nowhere. It's literally all about embodying the state of the future self.
Okay, step 4, identifying the identity gap.
So you've drawn out the future you, but now you have to draw a second stick figure representing exactly who you are today. And this is where you expose your own blocks. You have to contrast the two. Maybe the current you is complaining a lot, procrastinating, feeling bitter, and thinking small. Meanwhile, the future you is highly confident, proactive, loving, relentless, and visionary. I'm not gonna lie, confronting this gap, it can feel like a punch in the face. It's radically honest, and yeah, it's usually pretty uncomfortable.
But that discomfort is absolutely crucial because awareness always precedes action. Getting brutal, unfiltered clarity on this discrepancy is the exact turning point you need. You have to realize that you are the light through which the shadow of your reality is cast. If you want that shadow to change, the light, meaning your current identity, has to change first. Which brings us to step 5, closing the gap today. Now here is the craziest paradox of this whole framework. To actually reach the goal, you have to completely let go of looking for physical evidence of the goal. Seriously, let go of the goals and focus entirely on the identity. Why? Because constantly looking around and obsessing over the lack of money or the lack of success simply signals separation to the universe. You're basically acting like a victim of your circumstances. Instead, you have to act as a higher consciousness being. You have to fully embody that new identity today, even if your physical reality looks exactly the same as it did yesterday. So, how do you actually do that without overwhelming yourself? You slowly lean into this new identity, just step by step. You do not have to force a massive life overhaul in a single afternoon. You take small, totally new actions to show your nervous system that it's safe to be this new person. As you build that momentum, your thoughts, your beliefs, and your natural, everyday actions will start to subconsciously shift, and eventually your new reality will inevitably catch up to your new energy. And finally, step 6, surviving the ego death. Okay, fair warning, this is not going to be entirely smooth sailing. This is the inevitable climax of doing all this intense inner work. You are going to face some fierce psychological resistance. Think about it, your ego is this entity you've been building your entire life, and it is going to fight tooth and nail to survive. The old self doesn't want to die. It's going to throw all sorts of emotional triggers at you just to keep you attached to what's familiar. But you have to reframe this. These triggers are not failures. In fact, they are absolute proof that the autopilot ego is finally dying and the transformation process is actually working. You have to remember, progress is almost never a straight upward line. It's more like you make the decision to shift, you gain some solid momentum, and then bam, you hit a massive trigger phase. You might even feel like you're going totally backward. But I promise you, you aren't. These triggers are just dormant, subconscious traumas bubbling up to the surface so they can finally be released for good. To survive this phase, you have to approach yourself with profound compassion. The source shares this incredibly relatable anecdote about finally starting their YouTube channel only to be hit with intense self-sabotage and this totally paralyzing fear of being seen. But instead of just giving up and deciding, oh, I guess this isn't for me, they realized it was just a dormant fear of rejection coming up. By simply asking, what part of me is this triggering, and then soothing that specific fear with compassion, they were able to release it completely. That was the key to clearing the way and finally leveling up. Which leaves us with the ultimate question to ask yourself today as you design your future. What part of your old ego is fighting to survive right now? And more importantly, how will you soothe it so you can finally level up? I want you to take that question with you, grab your pen and paper, and start drawing out that stick figure. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.